It was my birthday dinner with my family. In the middle of the laughter, a waitress leaned in and slid a note to me. "Don't drink that." My heart stopped. On instinct, I switched my glass with my daughter-in-law's. And within 5 minutes, everything changed. I watched Amanda's face flush as she sipped from my glass. Her words slurred mid-sentence. Then her eyes rolled back and she collapsed onto the restaurant floor. In that moment, I realized someone in my own family had just tried to murder me. The elegant dining room at Bellini's erupted into chaos. Amanda's body jerked violently on the polished hardwood floor, white foam bubbling from her lips. My son James dropped to his knees beside her, his face ashen with shock. "Someone call an ambulance," he shouted, cradling her head to prevent injury from the seizure. "She must be having an allergic reaction." The restaurant manager rushed over, walkie-talkie in hand, barking instructions to his staff while trying to maintain order among the other diners, many of whom stood with phones raised, filming the emergency unfolding before them. "We need the police too," I insisted, my voice steadier than I felt. "This wasn't an accident." James shot me a look of confusion mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. "Dad, what are you talking about? She has food allergies." "No, she doesn't," I replied firmly. Not once in 3 years has Amanda ever mentioned food allergies. The waitress who had passed me the warning note hovered nearby, visibly shaken. Her name tag read, Tessa. When James became distracted helping the paramedics who had arrived with remarkable speed, I pulled her aside. "Why did you warn me?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Tessa glanced nervously toward Amanda, now being loaded onto a stretcher. "I overheard her in the bathroom," she whispered. She was on the phone telling someone she'd put something in the old man's drink and that it would look natural. Tessa twisted her hands anxiously. I didn't know what to do, but I couldn't just let it happen. I squeezed her arm gratefully. "You may have saved my life." The ambulance departed with sirens blaring, James riding alongside his unconscious wife. My own wife Susan sat stunned at our table, her 72nd birthday celebration for me now in ruins. I sat beside her, my mind racing with implications too terrible to voice. At the hospital, the emergency room was a flurry of urgent activity. The doctors pumped Amanda's stomach while James paced the waiting room, alternating between worried husband and angry son. "Why would you say something like that, Dad? Why would you accuse Amanda of something so horrible?" I didn't answer immediately, watching his face carefully. His concern seemed genuine, but something felt off. The inconsistencies in his behavior nagged at me. 1 minute he was defending his wife, the next he was asking detailed questions about what exactly had happened at the table when she collapsed. He kept checking his phone nervously. The doctor approached us several hours later, her expression grave. "We found toxic levels of ethylene glycol in her system," she said quietly. "What's that?" Susan asked. "Antifreeze," I answered before the doctor could respond. "Someone poisoned her with antifreeze." The doctor nodded. "The police have been notified." This was not accidental ingestion. While James spoke with the doctor, I slipped away to the nurse's station where I spotted a police detective interviewing Tessa, who had apparently been asked to come to the hospital to give a statement. I waited until they finished before approaching the detective. "Detective, I believe I was the intended target," I said, introducing myself. "That was my 70th birthday dinner, and the waitress warned me not to drink from my glass." The detective, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, took my statement seriously. She asked me to wait while she made a call, and within the hour, a forensic team was examining Amanda's belongings that James had brought to the hospital. Susan sat rigidly in a corner chair, refusing to believe any of this was happening. While no one was looking, I used my phone to discreetly photograph the contents of Amanda's purse that had been set aside. Among the usual items, I spotted a small vial of clear liquid. The detective saw me and frowned but didn't confiscate my phone. Late that night, as Amanda lay unconscious in intensive care, the detective pulled me aside with disturbing news. "We found something concerning on Mrs. Patterson's laptop," she said. "Recent searches for untraceable poisons and the effects of antifreeze poisoning. Also, she's been looking up the details of your life insurance policy." I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. So she definitely intended to kill me. "It appears that way," the detective confirmed. "But there's more." She paused, glancing toward where James sat slumped in a waiting room chair. Your son has accumulated gambling debts exceeding $200,000 to some very dangerous people. We found threatening messages on his phone. I stared at my son, this stranger who had somehow replaced the boy I'd raised, and wondered which was worse, that my daughter-in-law had tried to murder me, or that my own son might have been complicit in the attempt. The next morning, sitting alone in my study with a cup of coffee I'd prepared myself, I began to recall incidents I'd dismissed over the 3 years since James had brought Amanda into our lives. There had been that Christmas dinner when I'd become violently ill after eating a dish only Amanda had handled. The unexplained dizzy spells that coincided with weekends when she insisted on preparing my favorite tea. The time my blood pressure medication seemed to have the opposite effect, sending me to the emergency room when Amanda was staying with us to help out. I'd attributed these incidents to age, to stress, to the natural decline of a man entering his 70s. Now I saw them through a darker lens, as potential practice runs for my murder. My phone rang. It was Travis, my older son, calling from Seattle. "Dad, I'm at the airport. I'll be there in 4 hours." I felt a rush of relief. Travis had never warmed to Amanda, a fact that had created tension between my sons. "Travis, I don't know what's happening anymore," I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. "I do," he said grimly. "Amanda has been systematically isolating James from everyone who cares about him. I've seen it happening, but James wouldn't listen." After hanging up, I made another call to an old friend from my days as a corporate attorney. Jack Morrow had left the firm to start his own private investigation business 15 years ago. "I need your help, Jack," I said. "I need to know everything about my daughter-in-law. I think she tried to kill me." Jack arrived at the house before Travis, bringing with him a folder of preliminary information he'd pulled together. "Amanda Parker Patterson," he said, laying photographs on my desk. "Married 3 times before James. Her first husband, Gregory Nichols, died of apparent kidney failure at 42. The death was ruled natural causes, but his family had suspicions that were never proven." My stomach churned. "And the other husbands?" "Husband number 2 filed for divorce after his elderly mother died while in Amanda's care. He suspected foul play but couldn't prove anything. Husband 3 lost everything in their divorce. He tried to warn James when he found out they were engaged, but James dismissed him as bitter. When Travis arrived, we shared everything with him. His face hardened as he looked through Jack's information. "I knew there was something wrong with her," he said. "She's always watching Dad when she thinks no one is looking. And she's constantly bringing up his will, asking if everything is taken care of." Susan returned from the hospital later that evening, exhausted and defensive. "James is devastated," she said when I tried to show her Jack's findings. "How can you be investigating his wife when she's fighting for her life? This is insane, Kurt." "Susan, she tried to poison me," I insisted. "You don't know that," she snapped. "The police are investigating, but you've already decided she's guilty. Maybe someone was trying to poison her. Did you ever think of that?" I hadn't. The thought settled uncomfortably in my mind. The next day, while Susan was napping, and Travis was meeting with Jack, I slipped into my home office and began searching for the copy of my will. It wasn't in the filing cabinet where it belonged. After an hour of increasingly frantic searching, I found it hidden inside a hollowed-out book in James's old bedroom, now used as a guest room where he and Amanda stayed when visiting. With shaking hands, I opened the document. Originally, my estate had been divided equally between my 2 sons, with provisions for Susan and a few charitable contributions. This version named James as sole beneficiary, with a small stipend for Susan. Travis had been removed entirely. The signature looked like mine, but I had never authorized these changes. When I confronted Susan with what I'd found, she became agitated. "You're becoming paranoid, Kurt. First you accuse Amanda of trying to kill you, now you're suggesting she forged legal documents. Maybe you forgot making those changes. You haven't been yourself lately." Her dismissal of my concerns felt like a physical blow. After 50 years of marriage, my wife didn't believe me. James had barely left the hospital since Amanda was admitted. According to Susan, he slept in the chair beside her bed, spoke constantly to her unconscious form, and wept frequently. When I visited, he would leave the room, claiming he needed coffee, but clearly avoiding me. On the 3rd day, Amanda woke up. By the time I arrived at the hospital, she was sitting up in bed, pale but alert, with James hovering protectively at her side. Detective Reeves was already there. prepared to question her. "Someone tried to kill me," Amanda said weakly, her eyes filling with tears. I could taste something wrong in the drink, but by then it was too late. James shot me an accusatory glance. "She thinks someone switched her glass." My blood ran cold as I realized she was trying to flip the script, painting herself as the victim rather than the perpetrator. Detective Reeves looked between us, her expression neutral. "Mrs. Patterson, can you think of anyone who would want to harm you?" Amanda's eyes slid to me briefly before she looked down at her blanket-covered lap. "I don't know. Kurt has seemed so distant lately, so angry about something." Before I could respond, Jack called my cell phone. I stepped into the hallway to answer. "Kurt, Amanda Parker doesn't exist," he said without preamble. "At least, not before 8 years ago. I've been checking records in every state, and there's no birth certificate, no school records, nothing before she suddenly appeared in Oregon with a shiny new driver's license and social security number." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your daughter-in-law is using a stolen or manufactured identity. Her real name is Jennifer Wilson. She has a history of identity theft and elder fraud across multiple states. She's suspected in at least 2 deaths of elderly people she cared for, but there was never enough evidence to charge her." I leaned against the wall, my knees suddenly weak. "Does she work alone?" Jack hesitated. "That's unclear. But in at least one case, she worked with a male accomplice who posed as her husband." I looked through the doorway of Amanda's room, where my son sat holding her hand, and wondered if he was her dupe or her accomplice. Despite police suspicion, there wasn't enough conclusive evidence to hold Amanda. The poisoning could have been intended for either of us, and without proof of her intentions, the investigation stalled. 1 week after my ruined birthday dinner, James brought Amanda home from the hospital to recover. Not to their own home 20 minutes away, but to our house, claiming she needed Susan's nurturing care. I objected strenuously in private, but Susan overruled me. "She nearly died, Kurt. We can't turn our backs on family." "She's not family," I hissed. "She's a con artist at best, a murderer at worst." Susan shook her head sadly. "I'm worried about you. This obsession isn't healthy." That night, lying in bed next to my wife of 50 years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Down the hall, the woman who had tried to kill me slept under my roof, with my son beside her. I got up silently and locked our bedroom door, something I'd never done before. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. I smiled at breakfast, made small talk, and acted as though I wasn't watching every move Amanda made near my food or drinks. When no one was looking, I poured my coffee into a potted plant and got a fresh cup from a new pot I made myself. After breakfast, I drove to an electronics store and purchased several small cameras disguised as ordinary objects: a clock for the kitchen, a smoke detector for the hallway, a phone charger for the guest room. I installed them when the house was empty, then connected them to an app on my phone. I also began recording every conversation using my phone's recording function. 3 days into this arrangement, I made a critical mistake. Distracted by a call from Travis, I drank from a coffee cup that had been left unattended on my desk. Within 20 minutes, I was violently ill, vomiting uncontrollably in the bathroom. Susan called an ambulance despite Amanda suggesting it was probably just a stomach bug going around. At the hospital, I insisted they test for poisons. The results showed the same substance that had been found in Amanda's system, though in a much smaller dose. Not enough to kill, but enough to make me very sick. Detective Reeves visited me in the hospital room. "This complicates things," she admitted. "Now both you and your daughter-in-law have been poisoned in the same household." "She did this," I insisted weakly. "She's trying to make it look like there's some third party targeting both of us." Reeves sighed. "Mr. Patterson, we have no concrete evidence against her. The investigation is ongoing, but without proof, there's nothing we can do." I was released the next day, returning to a house that felt increasingly hostile. Susan hovered between Amanda and me, trying to keep peace while clearly doubting my version of events. James alternated between avoiding me and watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. My only ally was my neighbor, Warren Guthrie, a retired police officer who lived alone next door. I began visiting him daily, ostensibly to borrow tools or discuss yard maintenance, but actually to share my growing file of evidence and concerns. "You need to get out of that house," Warren advised after hearing the full story. "They've already tried to poison you twice." "I can't leave Susan there with them," I replied. "And if I leave, I'll look guilty of something. They're already working on Susan, telling her I'm becoming paranoid and confused. Warren's weathered face darkened. Elder abuse often starts that way. They isolate the victim, convince others they're mentally declining, then take control of their finances. That evening, I overheard Amanda speaking softly to Susan in the kitchen. "I'm really worried about Kurt," she was saying. "These accusations, the paranoia, the mood swings. My grandfather showed the same symptoms before his dementia diagnosis." Susan's response was too quiet to hear, but the seed had been planted. When I entered the room, both women fell silent and exchanged meaningful glances. The next morning I discovered my regular medications had been replaced with similar-looking pills. I took them to a pharmacist friend who identified them as powerful sedatives that would have made me appear confused and disoriented. That night, I checked the footage from my hidden cameras. The kitchen camera showed Amanda entering at 3 a.m, opening my pill organizer and swapping the contents. But the most chilling footage came from the guest room camera. James and Amanda, speaking in low voices, their expressions calculating rather than concerned. "We need to accelerate the timeline," James was saying. "The PI my brother hired is getting too close." Amanda nodded. "Your father is more resilient than we expected. But the groundwork is laid with your mother. She's starting to believe he's experiencing cognitive decline." "How long before we can move forward with the accident?" James asked. "Give me 2 more weeks," Amanda replied. "By then, everyone will be prepared to believe he was confused, wandered out of the house, and fell down those steep steps to the lake. Especially after the doctor confirms early-stage dementia." I watched in horror as my own son discussed my murder with the calm detachment of someone planning a business transaction. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. The next morning, I waited until Susan left for her weekly bridge game before confronting James alone. I brought him into my study, closed the door, and without preamble, played the video of his conversation with Amanda. His face drained of color. For several seconds, he said nothing, staring at the phone screen as though it were a snake about to strike. Then his shoulders slumped, and he buried his face in his hands. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he whispered, voice breaking. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt." "Then why?" I demanded, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Why would you plot to kill your own father?" James looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "It started small. Gambling debts I thought I could handle. Then they grew, and the people I owed money to. They're not the kind who accept late payments. They threatened to hurt me, to hurt Mom if I didn't pay. You could have come to me," I said, the words tasting bitter. "I would have helped you." "I did come to you. 3 years ago," James replied, a flash of resentment crossing his features. "You lectured me about responsibility and refused to bail me out. Said I needed to learn from my mistakes." I remembered the conversation. James had asked for $20,000 without explanation. I had indeed refused, concerned about his secretive behavior and suspected gambling. I hadn't known the full extent of his problem. "So you decided to murder me instead? For my money?" "No," James protested. "That was Amanda's idea. I met her at a casino. She said she could help me get out of debt. At first, it was just small loans from your accounts, money you wouldn't miss. Then she suggested the will changes, using contacts she had to create convincing forgeries." "And the poisoning?" I asked coldly. James swallowed hard. "She said it would look natural. Heart failure, quick and painless. I never wanted that, I swear. When you switched the glasses somehow, and she collapsed instead." I was horrified. "Yet you brought her back to this house?" continued the plan. "The people I owe would kill me if I don't pay them $200,000 by the end of the month." Amanda convinced me we had no choice but to continue. James looked up, a desperate gleam in his eyes. "Help me, Dad. Help me get out of this mess, and I'll testify against her. She's done this before. She told me she's never been caught, but she's done this to other families." I studied my son's face, looking for the boy I had raised, the man I thought I knew. Part of me wanted to believe him, to think he had been manipulated rather than malicious. But trust, once shattered, isn't easily restored. "I'll help you on one condition," I said finally. "You wear a wire. Get her to confess to everything. The previous murders, the identity theft, the plan to kill me." James nodded eagerly. "Yes, anything. I'll do it tonight when Mom is asleep." I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to think that my son had been led astray rather than turned against me of his own volition. I arranged for Warren to provide a recording device, and that evening I waited in my study, listening through an earpiece as James confronted Amanda in their room. But instead of exposing her, he warned her. "He knows everything," I heard James whisper urgently. "He has videos, recordings. He wants me to wear a wire and get you to confess." "Did you take it?" Amanda asked sharply. "Of course not. But we need a new plan. Fast." "I've been working on your mother," Amanda replied after a pause. "She's convinced Kurt is experiencing dementia. My friend Dr. Leland will confirm the diagnosis if we can get Kurt to see him. And then what? Then we apologize. We play the concerned, repentant children. I'll say the poisoning incident was a cry for help, that I was addicted to pain medication after my car accident last year. We convince everyone that Kurt's accusations are the product of cognitive decline. My blood ran cold as I listened to them calmly discussing how to discredit me, to take everything I had worked for, and ultimately, to take my life. The next day, Amanda called a family meeting. Susan, James, and I sat in the living room as Amanda tearfully confessed to a non-existent painkiller addiction. "The incident at the restaurant was my rock bottom," she sobbed. "I mixed medications with alcohol, and it caused a terrible reaction. I'm so sorry for all the worry I've caused, and for any confusion." Susan embraced her, murmuring words of support and understanding. James played his part perfectly, the concerned husband standing by his troubled wife. I said nothing, watching the performance with growing anger. "Kurt," Amanda said, turning tear-filled eyes to me, "I know you've been concerned about me, about my influence on James. I hope you can forgive me, and we can start fresh." The performance was masterful. Had I not heard her true intentions the night before, I might have been swayed by her apparent sincerity. Instead, I nodded noncommittally and excused myself, claiming fatigue. Over the next week, the campaign to undermine me intensified. Susan began keeping a diary of my concerning behaviors, encouraged by Amanda. Appointments were made with specialists to address my memory issues. When I checked our bank accounts, I discovered our secondary savings had been drained, nearly $100,000 gone. The final blow came when I discovered documents for involuntary psychiatric commitment on James's laptop. My name was already filled in, with Susan listed as the petitioner. The listed physician was Dr. Andrew Leland, supposedly a renowned geriatric psychiatrist. A quick search revealed no such doctor existed in our state medical records. Further digging by Jack uncovered the truth. Dr. Leland was actually Andrew Kemp, a man with a suspended medical license who had been Amanda's boyfriend 6 years earlier. Together they had defrauded at least 2 elderly patients before disappearing with thousands in stolen funds. The trap was nearly complete. My own wife had been turned against me. My son was actively plotting my demise, and I was about to be declared mentally incompetent and committed to a facility where Amanda's accomplice could ensure I never emerged. That night, I packed a small bag and slipped out of the house while everyone slept. I couldn't stay under the same roof with people planning my destruction. More importantly, I needed space to plan my counterattack. I drove directly to Travis's hotel, calling him from the parking lot to let me in through a side door to avoid the lobby cameras. My older son was shocked to see me at 2 in the morning, disheveled and carrying a hastily packed overnight bag. "They're going to have me committed," I explained as he ushered me into his room. "Amanda has an accomplice posing as a doctor who will declare me incompetent. Once that happens, I lose everything. My freedom, my legal rights, my ability to fight back." Travis listened grimly as I shared everything. The recordings, the drained accounts, the commitment papers, the true identity of Dr. Leland. When I finished, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Caroline," he said. "She needs to hear this directly from you." Caroline Miller was Travis's friend from college, who now worked for the FBI's Elder Fraud Division. I'd met her at Travis's wedding years ago, but hadn't connected her to my current situation until that moment. 20 minutes later, we were on a secure call with Agent Miller, who listened without interruption as I laid out the entire twisted scenario. "This matches Jennifer Wilson's known patterns," she confirmed when I finished. "We've been tracking her for years, but she's careful. She never leaves enough evidence for charges that stick. But this time, with your recordings and witnesses like the waitress who warned you, we might finally build a case." "What about my son?" I asked, the question painful even to voice. He's involved, possibly coerced initially, but now an active participant. We'll sort out the levels of culpability, Caroline assured me. For now, we need to ensure your safety while building the case. Mr. Patterson, would you be willing to participate in a sting operation? The plan Caroline proposed was risky, but offered the best chance of catching Amanda and her accomplices with irrefutable evidence. I would return home, pretending my overnight absence was a simple misunderstanding. I would gradually appear more confused, playing into their narrative while gathering more evidence. Meanwhile, the FBI would investigate the fraudulent care facility where they planned to send me. My neighbor Warren's house would serve as the base of operations, with FBI agents monitoring surveillance equipment they would install in my home. Warren himself, with his police background, would act as my immediate backup if anything went wrong. What about Susan? I asked, my heart aching at the thought of my wife's unwitting role in this plot. We'll try to protect her from the fallout, Caroline promised. Based on what you've told us, she's another victim here, manipulated by experts at emotional con games. The next day, I returned home, claiming I'd gone for an early drive to clear my head and lost track of time. Susan was relieved but concerned, noting my confused state in her little book. Amanda watched me with calculating eyes, while James barely concealed his nervousness. I've been thinking. I told Susan that evening when we were alone. Maybe I should see that doctor you mentioned. I've been feeling a bit foggy lately. The relief on her face was painful to witness. Oh, Kurt, that's wonderful. I'll call Dr. Leland right away. Over the next few days, FBI technicians disguised as various service workers installed sophisticated monitoring equipment throughout the house. A gardener placed cameras in the yard. A plumber added listening devices in the bathrooms and kitchen. An electrician wired the main living areas. Warren kept watch from next door, a direct line to Agent Miller always open. My appointment with the fake Dr. Leland was scheduled for the following week. Before that could happen, I needed to accelerate the FBI's investigation into the care facility where I was to be committed. Meadowbrook Care Center, Caroline informed me during a clandestine meeting in Warren's garage. On paper, it's a legitimate assisted living facility specializing in memory care. In reality, we suspect it's a front for defrauding seniors of their assets. We've had reports of residents dying under suspicious circumstances, but nothing concrete enough for a warrant. Until now, I said grimly. Use me as the bait. Let them think they're getting a wealthy new resident. I'll wear a wire, get them to incriminate themselves. It's dangerous, Caroline warned. These people have likely killed before. So has Amanda, I reminded her. I'm already in danger every minute I stay in that house. At least this way, the danger serves a purpose. The plan moved forward. I visited Meadowbrook with Susan and James, playing the role of a resigned patient while secretly recording everything. The facility director, Martin Reynolds, was particularly interested in my financial portfolio, suggesting various estate planning services the center offered. Many of our residents find it simpler to transfer their assets directly to our management trust, he explained smoothly. It simplifies everything, especially for residents with cognitive challenges. I noticed the meaningful glance he exchanged with James, and the slight nod my son gave in return. The trap was baited. 2 days before I was scheduled to be committed, I announced at dinner that I wanted to make changes to my will. I've been thinking about my legacy, I explained to the startled faces around the table. I've decided to leave everything to charity. The Patterson Foundation will support ethical business education and elder rights advocacy. The panic that flashed across James and Amanda's faces was almost comical. Later that night, their heated whispers were captured clearly by the FBI's equipment. We need to move now, Amanda hissed. Before he can talk to his lawyer. The papers aren't finalized, James protested. The doctor needs another session to complete the competency assessment. We don't have time for that anymore, Amanda snapped. We do it tomorrow. Family dinner, just the 4 of us. You distract your mother, I'll handle your father. The FBI was ready. Agents positioned themselves in Warren's house and unmarked vehicles nearby. Additional agents raided Meadowbrook Care Center simultaneously, finding evidence of massive financial fraud and medical malpractice. For the final act of our trap, I suggested a special dinner at home. Just family, I emphasized. I have some important things to discuss before my appointment with Dr. Leland. That evening, as Susan prepared dinner with Amanda's help, I sat in the living room with James, making a show of reviewing financial documents. "I've consolidated everything into these accounts," I told him, showing him fake statements created by the FBI, all accessible with a single password after my death. James's eyes couldn't hide his interest. "That seems risky, Dad." "Maybe so," I agreed, "but I trust my family to do the right thing." Dinner began cordially enough. Susan had prepared my favorite meal, unaware of the drama about to unfold. Travis had been instructed to arrive late, ensuring he would be clear of suspicion in what was to come. Midway through the main course, I clutched my chest and gasped, putting on a convincing display of cardiac distress. "Kurt!" Susan cried, half rising from her chair. "His heart medication," Amanda said immediately. "I'll get it from the bathroom cabinet." James moved to distract his mother, just as planned. "Mom, help me get him to the couch." I watched through slitted eyes as Amanda hurried upstairs. The FBI agents monitoring the bathroom camera observed as she replaced my heart medication with a bottle identical in appearance but containing a lethal dose of digitalis stolen from Meadowbrook's medical supplies. Amanda returned with the pill bottle and a glass of water. "Here, Kurt, take your medication." I accepted the glass and pill with a shaking hand, making a show of swallowing while actually palming the tablet. Almost immediately, I began simulating worsening symptoms. "Something's wrong," I gasped. "Call an ambulance." "Let's wait a few minutes," Amanda suggested, her voice solicitous but her eyes cold. "Sometimes it takes a moment for the medication to work." James put his arm around Susan, both restraining and comforting her. "He'll be okay, Mom. The doctor said these episodes might happen." The front door opened, and Travis entered as planned. "Sorry I'm late for dinner," he called, then stopped short at the tableau before him. "Dad, what's happening?" His arrival disrupted their careful choreography. Amanda moved to intercept him, explaining in hushed tones that I was having one of my episodes. The distraction was all the FBI needed. Agent Miller's team rushed in from Warren's house, catching Amanda red-handed with the bottle of tampered medication. As agents secured James, Amanda's composure finally shattered. "This is ridiculous," she shrieked, backing away toward the kitchen. "Kurt is delusional. He needs help." In her panic, she grabbed Susan, pulling my stunned wife against her and snatching a knife from the table. "Stay back or I'll hurt her." "Amanda, don't," James pleaded, suddenly looking less like a conspirator and more like a terrified young man out of his depth. "Shut up, James," Amanda snarled. "You never had the stomach for this. 7 people I've put in the ground and never once been caught. I'm not going to prison because you lost your nerve." Susan's eyes were wide with shock and betrayal as the truth of our family's destruction was laid bare before her. "Let her go, Amanda," I said calmly, dropping all pretense of illness. "It's over." Amanda's grip tightened on the knife, pressing it against Susan's throat. "It's not over until I say it's over. Everyone back off or she dies." James looked between Amanda and the FBI agents, then made his choice. He bolted for the door, thinking only of saving himself. 2 agents tackled him on the front lawn, his final betrayal complete. The standoff intensified as Amanda backed toward the rear door, dragging Susan with her. Agent Miller signaled her team to hold position, recognizing the volatility of the situation. "Think about this carefully, Jennifer," Miller said, using Amanda's real name. "You've avoided capture by being smart. Is this smart? There's no escape route here." For a moment, indecision flickered across Amanda's face. Then her features hardened. "There's always an escape route if you're willing to create enough chaos." As Amanda edged toward the door with Susan as her shield, I recalled something Warren had taught me during our conversations about self-defense. "A hostage taker is focused on controlling their victim and watching their escape route," he'd explained. "They're rarely prepared for a distraction from an unexpected direction." I caught Susan's eye and gave her the slightest nod, praying she would understand. Then I pointed dramatically toward the window behind Amanda. "Travis, no!" It was a simple misdirection, but effective. Amanda instinctively glanced back, loosening her grip on Susan just enough. Susan, bless her quick thinking, went limp in Amanda's arms, dropping her weight suddenly. The unexpected movement unbalanced Amanda, the knife wavering away from Susan's throat for a crucial second. I lunged forward, grabbing Amanda's wrist and twisting sharply the way Warren had shown me. The knife clattered to the floor as Amanda shrieked in pain and rage. Susan scrambled away, falling into Travis's protective embrace. FBI agents swarmed in, securing Amanda within seconds. Her furious screams echoed through the house as they handcuffed her and recited her rights. "You're nothing," she spat at me. "A useless old man who should have died quietly and gratefully." I looked at this woman who had nearly destroyed my family, feeling oddly calm now that the danger had passed. "Age brings wisdom, Jennifer. Something you'll have plenty of time to acquire in prison." As they led her away, I turned to find James being brought back in by 2 agents. My son couldn't meet my eyes, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "James Patterson." Agent Miller began formally. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse." "Wait," I interjected. "What deal can we make if he cooperates fully? There are other victims out there, other families who deserve justice." Miller considered this. "If he provides substantive information leading to additional charges against Jennifer Wilson and her network, the U.S. Attorney might consider a reduced sentence." James looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "I'll tell you everything, all of it. The people at Meadowbrook, her previous identities, the other victims. Everything I know." As they took James away, Susan collapsed into a dining room chair, her face ashen. "I believed her," she whispered. "I thought you were losing your mind. I was going to help them lock you away." I knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands in mine. "You were manipulated by experts, Susan. They knew exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit. I should have trusted you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "After 50 years, I should have known better." I pulled her gently to her feet and into my arms. "They almost destroyed us. Let's not finish the job for them." The house swarmed with FBI agents and police for hours, collecting evidence and taking statements. Amanda's storage unit yielded a treasure trove of incriminating materials, fake IDs, financial records of previous victims, even journal entries detailing her methods. Most damning were trophies she had kept from 3 previously unsolved murders, providing closure to families who had spent years wondering what had happened to their loved one. James, faced with overwhelming evidence against him, cooperated fully. His testimony revealed the full extent of Amanda's operation, including accomplices at Meadowbrook and connections to an organized network of elder fraud perpetrators spanning multiple states. As dawn broke, our house finally emptied of law enforcement. Travis made coffee while Susan slept upstairs, emotionally exhausted. Warren came over to check on us, his steady presence a comfort in the aftermath of chaos. "You did good, Kurt," he said quietly. "Not many men your age could have handled what you just went through." I looked at my hands, surprised to find them steady. "I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice," Warren replied. "You could have run, hidden, let the FBI handle everything. Instead, you stood your ground and protected your family." I thought about James, now in a holding cell, awaiting arraignment. "Not all of them," Warren nodded soberly. "Some wounds can't be healed overnight, but they can heal, given time and the right care." As I sipped my coffee, watching the sunrise through my kitchen window, I realized that while my 70th birthday had nearly been my last, it had also given me something unexpected: the knowledge that even in my 8th decade, I was still capable of fighting for what mattered most. 6 months passed before Amanda's case went to trial. Those months were filled with painful revelations, emotional testimony, and the slow, arduous process of rebuilding trust. Susan and I began counseling, working through her guilt and my lingering fear. Some days were harder than others, but we faced them together, just as we had faced the previous 50 years. Travis temporarily relocated his tech consulting business to be closer to us, his presence a stabilizing force in our fractured family. Warren became a regular at our Sunday dinners, his friendship one of the few positive outcomes of the ordeal. James cooperated extensively with authorities, providing information that led to the arrest of 12 members of Amanda's elder fraud network. In exchange for his testimony, he received a reduced sentence of 8 years with the possibility of parole after 5. His gambling addiction was addressed through mandatory treatment programs. I visited him monthly in prison, our conversations initially strained but gradually evolving into something resembling honest communication. James struggled to explain how he had fallen so far, how desperation and Amanda's manipulation had led him to betray his family so completely. "She made it seem reasonable at first," he explained during one visit. "Just borrowing money you wouldn't miss, then paying it back later. Then it became about protecting Mom from worry. Then about how you had lived a full life already. "And you believe that justified murder?" I asked, not angry but genuinely trying to understand. James shook his head, unable to meet my eyes. I told myself I wasn't really doing it, that she was. That I was just letting it happen. It's no excuse. I know that now. The path to forgiveness would be long, perhaps never complete. But I was determined to try for both our sakes. Amanda's trial became national news, her network of elder fraud and murder finally exposed. Tessa, the waitress whose warning had saved my life, testified about what she had overheard in the restaurant bathroom. Her quiet courage earned her recognition from victim advocacy groups nationwide. When my turn came to testify, I faced Amanda across the courtroom. She had lost the polished charm that had so effectively manipulated my family, her expression now hard and hateful. As I recounted the events that had nearly cost me my life, I felt not anger but a profound sadness for all the damage she had caused. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge, citing the calculated nature of the crimes and Amanda's lack of remorse, sentenced her to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, I made a brief statement. Elder abuse and fraud are silent epidemics in our society. My family's story is unfortunately not unique, only unusual in that we caught the perpetrators. I hope our experience will encourage others to trust their instincts when something feels wrong, and for families to maintain open communication as loved ones age. In the months that followed, I channeled my experience into advocacy work, speaking at senior centers and community organizations about the warning signs of elder fraud and financial abuse. Susan often joined me, adding her perspective as someone who had been unwittingly manipulated into doubting her own husband. "Trust is a precious thing," she would tell audiences, "and predators know exactly how to undermine it. The best defense is keeping communication open and watching for sudden changes in family dynamics." The Patterson Foundation, originally conceived as a ruse to panic James and Amanda, became a reality. With Travis's business acumen and my legal background, we established a nonprofit dedicated to educating seniors about financial security and funding legal advocacy for elder abuse victims. 1 year after the birthday dinner that had nearly ended my life, we gathered for a very different celebration. Susan, Travis, Warren, Tessa, and her husband. Several FBI agents, including Caroline Miller, and even my lawyer Jack were present. James, of course, was absent, but he had sent a card with a simple message. "I'm working to become someone you can be proud of again." As I looked around at the faces of those who had helped save me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude mixed with hard-won wisdom. "A year ago," I said, raising my glass for a toast, "I thought turning 70 meant I was entering the final chapter of my life. I never imagined it would be the beginning of one of the most important journeys I've ever taken." Susan squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "To second chances," she said softly. "And to trusting your instincts," added Warren. "To justice," Caroline contributed. Tessa smiled shyly. "To doing the right thing, even when it's scary." I nodded, looking at each of them in turn. To all of that, and to this truth I've learned. Age isn't about becoming irrelevant or vulnerable. It's about using everything you've learned over a lifetime to recognize threats, protect what matters, and stand your ground when necessary. Later that evening, as the party wound down, I stood on our back deck watching the sunset over the lake. Susan joined me, slipping her arm through mine. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. I considered the question, watching the golden light play across the water. "I'm thinking that the worst day of our lives led us to a place of greater strength and purpose than we had before. That doesn't justify what happened, but it does mean we didn't just survive it, we transformed it." Susan rested her head against my shoulder. "You transformed it, Kurt. You fought when many would have given up." I shook my head, smiling down at her. "We fought, all of us together. That's the lesson I want to share with others. No matter your age, you're never powerless when you trust yourself and find the right allies." As darkness settled over the lake, I thought about the thousands of seniors who faced manipulation and abuse without the resources or support I had been fortunate to find. My 71st year would be dedicated to reaching them, to turning my trauma into a beacon that might guide others to safety. The birthday that almost killed me had ultimately given me new purpose, a mission worthy of my remaining years. And for that unexpected gift, I was profoundly grateful. Have you ever had to trust your instincts when something felt wrong, even when others doubted you? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from this message about the importance of vigilance and self-trust at any age. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize when something isn't right and the courage to act on that knowledge.